she'll actually do anything for money, Marina Purkiss. You might as well just call her the political version of Bonnie Blue, because if the price is high enough, Calvin, all of the morals go out the window. Let's continue our countdown of the 50 worst people in the UK today. At number 46 on the list, taking a massive stumble down 22 places from number 44, Marina Purkiss, the nauseating left-wing commentator. And I think Carol Vorderman, without any discernible brain power, has slumped so far because she proves that an incompetent Labour administration is not good news for the haters and wreckers. Purkiss, remember, is the host of a god-awful global podcast with a shopping TV presenter and failed on the graveyard shift on LBC. She was recently humiliated on the station when she tried to degrade Britain's wonderful farmers. So she is increasingly irrelevant, Father Calvin, but I think what's interesting is hard left figures like Purkiss are just struggling to cope in this new world where, let's be honest, all of the incompetence is coming from Labour, and she absolutely promised her audience that we were going to be entering some sort of peace and harmony, the promised land, Father Calvin.
Yeah. I mean, in her own words, she almost cried when Ed Miliband was given Minister of Climate Crisis.
I cried. I cried for very different reasons.
Right. But I don't think she's publicly apologized for attacking you on false accusations.
No,
I remember the Mirror had to.
No, she didn't. And she is actually a despicable human being. And I don't say that lightly. You know, there are other people, Father Calvin, in this space. I don't know, who would I say? Someone like Pippa Carrera, the political editor of The Guardian, who I completely disagree with politically, but I would never describe her as a despicable human being. But Marina Purkiss is. She is nasty. She will spread lies and what the left call disinformation to try and bring down her enemies. And I find it sickening, actually, that she remains a fixture in that space. But as I say, I think the space is becoming so much more fringe-like, Father Calvin, because if you are a left-wing journalist or commentator and you are still deciding to talk about Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage rather than the actual corruption that is actually happening right now at number 10 Downing Street, you're like a dishonest actor, right? Like, how can anyone take you seriously about anything again?
They were attacking the Conservative government consistently while the Conservative government were in power. And they were saying, yeah, we're punching up. But now the Labour government are in power. They no longer want to punch up. Funny that, isn't it? And they continue attacking the same people. So now they're punching down by their own measure. And instead of just being honest and saying, these people like Marina Purkiss and Carol Vorderman, they're not journalists. They are hard left activists. If they were open and transparent about it, people won't be as bothered. But it's the fact that they cover it up and they lie. It's the hypocrisy of it all that always gets people riled up. Marina Purkiss in particular is not a very nice person. I've seen the way she treated you and attacks you. And I've seen the way she treats other people and attacks when she doesn't like them. She doesn't like their politics. It's not a good faith engagement. It never is with her.
No, see, I remember when she came in to GB News, which I found particularly shocking, by the way, that GB News would want her in. That's the first thing. But she wants the money, right? So she'll actually do anything for money, Marina Purkiss. You might as well just call her the political version of Bonnie Blue, because if the price is high enough, Calvin, all of the morals go out the window, right? Because let me tell you, you could not pay me enough money to go and sit down with Byline Times. Never, ever, ever. But political version of Bonnie Blue, Marina Purkiss, strutted into the GB News studio as if she owned the place, treated the staff behind the scenes, Calvin, like a piece of dirt on her shoe. And doesn't that actually show you the true person? Because actually, as you've pointed out, Calvin, lots of times, many of the staff working at GB News are not politically aligned with the channel at all, right? They're just young, aspiring TV producers trying to make a buck.
So they would have probably aligned with her views if she'd have given them the time of day to find out. But it's funny, you can always tell whether a person is a good person or not by how they treat people who are under them on the ladder, really and truly, because that's never a station people stay in. People are always moving upwards or down, and so the people that you see to be underneath you, the way you treat them, that shows you everything you need to know about your character. And for people like her to swan in and just walk all over these people just shows that she's not a nice person, not someone that you want to work with. Now, there are lefties that I'm happy to work with. You know, I had to work with a lot of them when I was at GB News, and mostly on your panel.
Yeah.
Some of
them are decent human beings, actually, like Amy Nicole Turner. There are some, not many. I'm desperately racking my brain. Oh, who else was decent? Oh, Matthew Laza. He's a decent guy. Do you remember him? He was the former Labour advisor. He worked for Ed Miliband. Gloria Di Piero,
you know what?
Former Labour MP, incredibly decent woman, and she was so supportive of me during everything, Father Calvin.
Well, I actually really got on with Aaron Bastani. I really enjoyed having him.
He's a decent guy, but Navarra Media is just
massive communist,
so terrible.
Massively wrong, but decent. Yeah, and all his employees seem to be very toxic. So I don't know what that is about, but there's something about the leftist ideology that it cuts off their empathy. And so they're not able to see the world from a different perspective. They're not able to understand our point of view, for example. And that makes them hate us. And that's quite sad, because I don't think we hate the left. I think we see them as wrong. They genuinely hate us and don't want us to exist.
You're completely right. That is the huge difference, which is why it's so ironic when many of them have on their X profiles, Calvin, like #BeKind. And then you'll read down a couple of tweets and calling Liz Truss a despicable human being who should never show her face in public again. I mean, and that is Marina Purkiss, right? She is a professional troll and the Bonnie Blue of left-wing politics, because she will do anything if the money is high enough. But first, the reason you're watching this show is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to trust the mainstream media or so-called fact-checkers who claim to determine which facts are true. And there's good reason for that, given the debate over free speech, the controversy surrounding Brexit, and how Trump and other politicians challenging the status quo are portrayed. But I have the solution. It's called Ground News, and it's the best way to stay informed and cut through media bias and narratives so you can get the facts for yourself. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. But I want to show you this incredible website and app. Actually, it's a brilliant app. I've got it on my phone in action. So let's look at that speech earlier in the year from the US Vice President J.D. Vance, the Munich Security Conference. He tore into the European government. He tore into the UK. This is before the Oval Office meeting, but all about the despicable retraction of free speech. So what Ground News does is immediately collate the 361 sources covering the story into one place, and then its biased distribution service shows how the story is being covered by the media, but broken down by whether the outlets lean to the left or the right. You can then see every article about the topic broken down by the political position and ownership of the publication. So not surprisingly, Newsmax, GB News gave fair and accurate coverage in this case. The HuffPost and The Independent did not. What's more is that Ground News gets to know you personally, providing you with news stories you're interested in while also analysing your own biases. So my favourite feature is the blind spot feed. What it does is surface upwards of 20 stories every day that you might not be hearing about because of the corruption of the mainstream media. Look, I know the reason you're watching Outspoken is because you love the news, you're interested in the news, you know how important the news is, but you don't trust the legacy media to deliver it for you. So what Ground News does is give you the tools to understand the truth about what is going on. I can say it's the only way I read the news now because it allows me to see through media bias and manipulative narratives. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. You can subscribe through my link for 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. Couple of quick notes too. Ground News, subscriber funded, and supporting my sponsors also supports my work. So for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all the world's news in one place and think for yourself. It really is a game changer if you're a news junkie like me, which I reckon you are. So that's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show. Sticking with the left-wing media, Father Calvin, at number 45 on our list, Krishnan Guru Murthy, a new entry for the hard left Channel 4 news host. He is, of course, a fame-hungry former Strictly Come Dancing contestant, but more importantly, in the context of this countdown, an activist masquerading as a journalist who I think will finally bring the curtain down on the irresponsibly biased Channel 4 News, which sees its ratings at 7 p.m. plummet by the month, by the day. Remember, Calvin, this man was suspended for just a week for calling then Conservative Minister Steve Baker the C word, yet Channel 4 still believes it's appropriate for him to host election night coverage, which he did so, by the way, alongside Emily Maitlis this year, mourning as Donald Trump won the US presidency. For me, Father Calvin, it is just an outrage that Channel 4 continues to claim it runs an impartial news service, given they have a guy like Krishnan Guru Murthy hosting the show.
Just to see those pictures you just had on screen, it's awful, that election night coverage with all of those liberals, no balance whatsoever. Channel 4 is actually the worst channel. I refuse to work with them. One time I did a documentary with them, and they clipped my answers from questions and put them on other questions in order to paint their own narrative. I'm like, this is fraud. Never mind libel, but yeah, awful outlet. But so I'm not surprised they employ someone like Krishnan Guru Murthy, who again is someone who plays the race card, says things like the war on woke is actually racism. It's like, no, there's a war on woke because we don't think woke is good, especially for young people. You know, telling them that they can change gender, or that they should be aborting their children, or that actually everything is racist and all black people are oppressed and all white people are oppressed. All this stuff is horrible. So that there is a war on woke, but he's like, no, it's just about racism. And he's one of these people that plays that card in order to get success. And what also gets me is these hard left extremists that we keep mentioning, they're all grifters. David Tennant, Marina Purkiss, Krishnan Guru Murthy, they're all there to make a buck. And people like us are the ones that they call grifters. Do you know how many reality TV things I've turned down, including Big Brother? And this guy is one who takes every single opportunity to get his face out there. Any chance to make some money and get his face out there. Wants fame, wants fortune. They're grifters.
I totally agree, Father Calvin. I mean, I've turned down Strictly Come Dancing. I've turned down Celebrity Big Brother. Obviously, none of those offers would come to me today because I now live in this brilliant, independent, cancelled space. But even when I was in the mainstream media, Calvin, no interest in doing any of that. This isn't about the fame or the money for me. It's about saving the country. And actually, I listened. If you haven't listened, Father Covenant, it really is worth going back, and I recommend everyone does so, to this great interview that Megyn Kelly did with the New York Times. She's obviously a good friend of both of us, Father Covenant, isn't she? And she's been incredibly supportive of us through all of our travails. Actually, just like you, she was the other person who quit GB News. The moment that GB News turned on me over that incident with Lawrence Fox. But she did this fascinating interview with the New York Times where she was just trying to get through to the New York Times on this podcast, the interview, that the type of media ecosystem that used to exist, that the New York Times celebrates, is over. And yet, Calvin, they are so obsessed with their own little circle, they just cannot understand that actually it is completely possible for Megyn Kelly to endorse Donald Trump and admit that she voted for Donald Trump while still being an effective journalist who at times, where necessary, will hold the administration to account. And Megyn was making the point, Calvin, do you not understand? That is what the left-wing media have done for decades. The only difference was they hid behind this very, very thin veneer of impartiality. And I feel like Krishnan Guru Murthy does that. It's like, we know exactly what you think. We know who you voted for, but actually you don't have the balls to come out and say it and be honest and be authentic with us. And I think it is that lack of authenticity, actually, which is why people will end up turning off the mainstream media. Because I'm sorry, you only have to watch about 30 seconds of Channel 4 News, which, by the way, I don't watch. You know, Father Calvin, I do watch quite a lot of mainstream media for work because I think it's important for me to show, to call out, you know, the British Bashing Corporation, Woke ITV, Sly News. But Channel 4 News is now such an irrelevance, I don't even put myself through it.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there in that people appreciate transparency and honesty. And so when I come on, I can say, yeah, I'm voting for UKIP, and you can say I'm supporting reform because I think they have the best chance of breaking the uniparty system. So people know exactly where you stand, and they know exactly where I stand. And Christian and Gary Murphy and people like that come on and say, oh, we're politically neutral. It's like the people that come out and say, you know, I'm above two-party politics. You always know they're the liberals. The Conservatives generally are quite honest and open about where they stand. The liberals lie in order to pretend they're superior to the rest of us. But the moment they leave the BBC or Channel 4, like Emily Maitlis, then you get to know that actually they voted Labour all along, right? And we knew that.
Yeah, no, indeed. And from my perspective as well, by the way, you can actually do that even working within the off-communist system. Like, I never denied where I stood politically, but I'm absolutely independent because I'm not a member of any of these parties. I don't shill for any of these parties, but I want to be honest with you at home about who I voted for so that you understand where my biases might lie. And I think that's why it's so much better that Meghan was totally honest and said, yep, I've had all of these issues with Trump in the past. The reason I voted for him this time is because he is the only person that is going to protect women's rights. Of course, there were loads of other issues too. And for example, I'm just thinking about my personal experience with this. Yes, I did support Boris Johnson because I was absolutely determined that Brexit needed to happen, even though, let's be honest, he didn't finish the job, and that was disappointing. But remember, Theresa May was actually going to take us back in. So sometimes you've got to deal with political reality, right, and political expediency. But the moment Boris Johnson unnecessarily locked us down, you know, Father Calvin, because you were with me at Talk Radio, I would call him out every day. And sure, it means that you end up on the banned list. You don't get the interviews. Megyn Kelly was talking about the fact that Donald Trump ignored her for 6 months after her last interview with him. Probably Nigel Farage is ignoring me a little bit at the moment. But I'm sorry, I will not shill for any person or any party, but I will be honest about where I stand when there is an election to come.
It's about having integrity, isn't it? I'm exactly the same as you in that. I was on Team Boris. I was like, this guy needs to get in. We've got to get Brexit done. And then he becomes illiberal in his ways of handling COVID. I'm like, okay, this is not good. And we called him out live on air, as we should. But they don't like to do that because they're tribal. For them, it's like left versus right. It's not right versus wrong. And so they'll always back the Labour Party. They'll always challenge and go against the Conservative Party because that's what they see as their job. And of course, it's not their job. Christian and Gary Murphy and all these people, what they should be doing is challenging anyone in authority who is in any position of power over us, any representative, any elected official, because that's the job of the media.
I just want all of these people, Father Calvin, to have to stand on their own 2 feet, or the organizations to stand on their own 2 feet. The democratization of news, I think, is going to be incredibly important in terms of saving the United Kingdom. And as we know, it desperately needs saving. Right now, the British Bashing Corporation, Channel 4 News, they all have this almost like bureaucratic advantage because of historic infrastructure, which has given them the platform. But it is changing. I mean, more people watch Outspoken, Father Calvin. I find it fascinating. Actually, quite a lot more in terms of watching the live show on their TV set than on their mobile phone. And I don't necessarily think that's something I would have expected when I first launched last July. But I'm delighted about it, because what it means is that people still want that experience of potentially watching the show on the big screen in their living room, but they're no longer just going to automatically go to Channel 1 or Channel 3 or Channel 4. Now, at that point, that's when there will be a reckoning for people like Christian Guru Murthy, because no one wants to watch his podcast, right? No one's watching Channel 4 news content or Channel 4 content on YouTube. The only audience advantage they have is because of the infrastructure that they have been provided by the government. And by the way, shame on the Conservative government for promising for over a decade that they would sell Channel 4 and then bottling it every single time. Shame on them for that.
Yeah, shame on them for not defunding the BBC as well. And you're absolutely right that people are tied into these systems. That pretty much the TV tax, or as they like to call it, the license fee.
It's a poll tax, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's a poll tax.
You pay a state propagandist in order to watch anything else. It's absurd. But the fact that you're right, BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and Channel 4 are all there by default on our telly boxes means that people are kind of hooked in from the beginning. But there's a generational shift, and I think once from the baby boomers onwards, people are finding optional things to tune into now. You're absolutely right. People are watching your YouTube show and your Substack on their television, and people are finding content for themselves. And so going forward, these old-fashioned legacy media infrastructures are going to die out, and that's going to be a good thing for consumer choice.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.